best offensive lines in the country. We got to see that, obviously. Yeah, I'm just excited to see this on the field, but I still have question marks, right? It's hard to trust something you haven't seen. Yeah,
Right.
I'm just human from that point of view. I may understand and try to understand the X's and O's, but I haven't seen it put in motion yet. So, but man, I got to give Kalen DeBoer a big clap when it comes to recruiting, because that was, to me, one of the biggest question marks I've seen from every Alabama fan was, can this guy go out there and recruit, bring these guys in? And from a national perspective, 6 players from California. I mean, what, one out of Cincinnati, Justin Hill, like, I mean, bringing in top tier talent from across the country. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just excited. I just want to see this on the field because, like I said, I've never paid attention to a 4-2-5 defense like this. So I'm excited.
And if I could, Jonathan, one of the things I'd say is whenever you're doing your research on the defense and how that goes, one of the things I'd really look into is the difference between pattern match and vision and break, because that, in my opinion, is the biggest differentiation between what Alabama was doing under Saban and what they will be doing now. They had the pattern match under Saban. And ironically, gentlemen, I don't know if you saw, but T-Rob was just at Georgia, did a little bit of, I don't want to say an interview, but for lack of a better word, it was a press conference. There we go. My brain started working. But he was talking about how one of the things he thinks Kirby has done an impeccable job of is taking the brilliance of what Nick Saban does on defense and simplifying it. That way the guys can play faster. Pattern match, she's a rough mistress, right? Like it's one of those where I always liken it to a pilot's checklist. You have all of these things that must be accomplished before you can ever take off. Vision and break, I'm not saying it's a walk in the park, but in my opinion, Jonathan, whenever you have this brand new secondary with so many young pieces, vision and break allows them to play faster. It allows them to play more instinctual. So that's probably what I'm very excited about. And also the difference in how the defensive line, defensive front will be used, because I went over some of the depth there. And PG, before I pass it to you, everybody in chat, get ready. This is the interior defensive line plus Wolf and Bandit position. There's a lot of talent. LT Overton, Jamarian Lathan, Keon Keeley, Tim Smith, Jaheim Otis, Tim Keenan, Jeremiah Beeman, Keanu Coote, James Smith, Damon Payne, Edric Hill, Jordan Renaud, Q Rob, Yanze Pierre, Noah Carter, Jay Sean Ross, Quay Russaw. That's all going to be coming at quarterbacks near you. I'm excited about that. PG, get to the outside perspective, but we love that. We love the outside looking in perspective. Let me know what you're thinking about Alabama as we barrel towards the season.
Yeah, so Coach was talking about it earlier, but the offensive line, I think, has to be probably the biggest thing you look at when in Alabama, because I just did a video on this yesterday. I was talking about Oklahoma's offensive line and what Sooner fans should expect this season. And I didn't realize Alabama had 49 sacks last year. 49. Right. And they were playing Michigan. I was like, no, because like in your mind, you got to have a good offensive line to be able to compete in the SEC against these defensive lines. So with what Kalen DeBoer did at Washington, I would just want to see that improvement there. But then also, I like what you guys are saying about Ryan Williams, but I'm maybe pumping the brakes a little bit this year. I'm not sure if he's going to be that dude in his freshman year, just because he's a freshman. He's going to make mistakes. But when you do look at his ability to run after the catch, he's got the speed. He's got track speed.
10.49 as a sophomore.
Yeah, that's where he's going to beat you.
I'm sorry, 10.39 as a sophomore.
Yeah, if you let him get out into space, he's going to beat you there. So looking at how Jalen Milroe is going to progress this year with those weapons and how that offensive line is going to be able to protect him under Kalen DeBoer, I think that's probably what I'm more so watching. I know the defense at Alabama is going to be, it should be at least middle of the pack in the SEC. I mean, maybe the secondary gives me a little bit of question because I know y'all lost some corners and stuff, but I know you guys had a lot of talent back there as well. So, and the defensive line is just stupid stacked. So I'm more so watching this offensive side of the ball and saying, how is it going to form and progress under Jalen or under Kalen DeBoer and Jalen Milroe? Is he going to end up being, because I put it in our private chat, I would think we're going to see a very similar offense for Alabama to what we saw with the 2019 OU offense and Jalen Hurts.
I don't disagree with that sentiment, but I don't believe Kalen DeBoer runs half-field reads like Lincoln Riley does. So
Pure
that's
progression.
that's going to be a lot different. Lincoln Riley is notoriously half field reads, and Kalen DeBoer is much more open. But if I understand from a theoretical standpoint what you're saying when you say that, right?
They're very similar in what you guys have in terms of offensive line, wide receiver talent. When I look at your guys' offensive room at Alabama, it's very similar to what Oklahoma had in 2019. Outside of Oklahoma, just had an all-world center.
Yeah, and listen, I hope that Parker Brailsford. Speaking about the offensive line very quickly, and then I'm going to take it to you, Jason and Jonathan. This is something Coach did an excellent video on. Actually, we were all on there together, I believe, for the first one. The difference in how the previous staff treated the offensive line and this one, I've never seen an offensive line pin and pull like Coach DeBoer's offensive line pin and pull. Yeah. He's sending the center. Like, he is – everybody is free game to pin and pull. I haven't seen that before. So you had the offensive
tight end. Even the tight end. Even the inline tight end, they pin and pull with him as well. It's crazy.
It's so cool to watch from a concept, right? Because it's so different than what Alabama did. But PG, listen, as much as Jake and Coach Shawn have really built me up into being a big believer in this offensive line, I think that is an unbelievably fair question. Listen, they were second to last in the nation in sacks allowed. Now, not all of that was on the offensive line. New quarterback. Name me a new quarterback, a first-year starting quarterback.
He held the ball a lot, yeah.
Yeah, name me a first-year starting quarterback that doesn't take sacks they shouldn't, and I'm going to show you a future Heisman Trophy winner.
And did it as a fifth-year starting quarterback.
Right, like that's the nature of it. An offensive scheme that was still really trying to find itself, that didn't have a lot of create. So you had a lot of moving pieces, but there's no question offensive line is such a big catalyst. Truth says he only runs a 4.33 when converted 100-meter time to 40 time. That isn't even that fast. And think about this, Truth. He's only gotten faster, right? Like that kid, he's unbelievable. Jason, talk to me.
Man, I continue to be blown away by the guys that you guys are bringing in. And I've been saying this for the last couple of months. You're not going to catch me being the guy that starts predicting the downfall of Alabama football. Not me. I think that when it comes to that offensive line, I think a lot of that stemmed from, as you said, he held onto the ball a lot last year. Jalen Milroe did. It seemed like there was situations where you either need to go or you need to get it out. And that's every young quarterback. That's every first-year guy. I mean, as I said with Dylan Gabriel, we were talking about that. If PG will remember this too, going into last year, like, get rid of the damn ball, Dylan. Get it out. We were talking about that, and that was one of those things. So it's, look, this is an offensive system that they have pretty much perfected everywhere else. When you look at who you had as a coordinator last year, trying to kind of feel his way around, and I always kind of felt like Tommy Rees was kind of trying to stick a square peg in a round hole kind of deal for the longest time. It just clearly was. It didn't get any better whenever they tried somebody else at USF either. So it wasn't like it was a Milroe thing. I think that Milroe is supremely talented. I do have questions about what he's going to do as a passer. I know that they've changed his motion and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a tough thing to do under pressure to not fall back on old habits or whatever. But if anybody's going to do it, it's these guys. And then the only other question that I would have is who's going to be the guy to step up in the receiving room and do that kind of stuff. But I think more than anything else, it's, are you going to be able to continue to be as good on the defensive side of the ball? If that secondary doesn't take a huge step back, I think they're right there in the playoff picture the whole year long. I don't see how they wouldn't be. And they've got one of the tougher conference slates too. When you start looking at, the teams that have competed over the last 5 to 10 years for these spots, they get the toughest schedules. You've got some teams like Texas and Missouri and even Ole Miss that, they're not playing as tough as schedules for the next 2 years, but they are going to have to run into a couple of those teams anyway. I think that Cream's going to rise to the top, though. I think it always does, right?
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things that you said that I think is something to expand on is the defense, right? Because that is something I'm curious about. Like I've always said, this is one of those streams where we'll tell you if we have concerns. When we say we have a question, we genuinely mean question. There are other places when they say question, that's a veil for concern. And that's all well and good, right? Because I think that as time has gone on, question is a colloquialism that has turned into concern. But here, when we say question, we genuinely mean a question. If I have a question, that means I believe there are prospective answers. It's like Oklahoma with the offensive line. I have a question about Oklahoma's offensive line. The answer, Bill Beatenbow. So it's like, okay, that's a guy that, Jason, almost like you said, you're not going to be the guy to predict the downfall of Alabama. I'm not going to be the guy to predict Bill Beatenbow is going to have a terrible offensive line.
Right. And I think so many people do that. You know, they're like automatically Oklahoma's going to fall to the middle of the pack at best and all that kind of stuff because they have a brand new offensive line and a brand new quarterback. And it's like, I even heard a guy on a show last night that said he was talking about not about Tyler Guyton being gone, a first rounder. He went to the other side of the offensive line and talked about the 6th round guy that got drafted, right? Not realizing that Tyler Guyton played on the right side because Dylan Gabriel, that was his blind side, right? So he's talking about, and it's such an easy thing to just default to why you don't think it's going to work out. The truth is we don't know what's going to happen, but yeah, I mean, if I'm going to question something about Oklahoma, it's not going to be their offense. It's not going to be their offense. They're running the same scheme, and if anything, hopefully they're not as explosive this year because maybe they'll sustain some drives, run the ball a little bit more, play a little bit more complimentary to help that defense be what it should be, which is top 2, 3 in the SEC at worst. That's how you win. That's how you get to a playoff running out of this league.
100%. And y'all return the most talent in the SEC on the defensive side of the ball. The other thing I did want to say, and it goes into my curiosity about Alabama's defense. I did a deep dive into this at the beginning of last season, what it takes to win a national championship. How good do you have to be? And the reason this notion came about was I had so many USC fans asking me, can we win it all? And I was like, well, Caleb is sensational. Like, he's a problem for anybody. Fair. Yeah. Branch, I would not want to cover him on my best day. That kid, I think, is an absolute superstar, right? At their wide receiver do it all. I mean, he's so electric. Let's be honest. No offense to any USC fans watching. I would love for him to enter the transfer portal and play at Alabama, right? He's just one of those guys. I'm sure you do, right? But he's one of those guys. Y'all have a wide receiver room you love. We have a wide receiver room. We're very excited. He's that good. But what I found at the end, gentlemen, is that you want to be a top 25 scoring defense. That's when you can win a national championship. There have been only 3 teams rank outside the top 25 win a national championship. And I don't think you want to be the exception. I think you always want to try and be the rule. Those exceptions, though, Auburn with Cam Newton, 2019 LSU, and I believe 2015 Ohio State, the Zeke Ohio State team. And none of those defenses outside of Auburn, 2010, their defense ranked 54th. LSU and Ohio State's were in the 30s. So it's not like they were terrible defenses. But top 25 is where you want to be. I think they can do that. Like, I'm very confident they can do that. Before we get into some ACC talk, PG, Jason, you had a scrimmage this weekend, right?
Yep.
Any excitement coming out of that?
Oh, it's exciting. PG, you want to start?
I mean, I just made a video talking about Oklahoma secondary. I think that's probably what I've really been watching because Oklahoma really struggled in zone coverage last year, and they got Des Malone out of the portal, and he had like a 70 pass coverage grade in 22, and then last year he had a 68% coverage grade, and that's one of the better ones Oklahoma's had on this team. So I definitely think Oklahoma is going to be improved there. But you're hearing a lot about Eli Bowen, Reggie Powers, and Michael Boganowski. All three are true freshmen. So I talked a little bit about the secondary, but all eyes are on the offensive line. And I think you're seeing some mixed people and their quote unquote concerns. And I think a lot of people just got to remember you're bringing in transfers like Hickman, who he came in, I think, as a spring addition. So he hasn't had that much of a time with Jackson Arnold to learn.
Did
to play
he even come in during the spring? I was
or
of the
maybe it was
mindset
a
that
summer.
he was,
Maybe it was a summer.
I think he was at the end of spring. I don't know that he got to go through spring with y'all.
Yeah. Maybe he wasn't even get to go through spring. But regardless, you're bringing in so many transfers that, I think there's just a little bit of like, okay, like everybody's understanding the play calls, how to adjust with those audibles and Jackson Arnold. So like, there's been some talk of Sexton moving to guard maybe for the first couple of games, which, Sexton's borderline first round tackle. So it's like makes everybody scratch their head. And really it's just there for play calling, right? He can help Branson Hickman understand the play calling. And, Branson Hickman is a really talented center. He was one of the four highest graded centers last year in college football. So
very talented.
But no, I mean, there's some quiet confidence around this team out of scrimmage. I mean, it's scrimmage. It's fall camp. Like, the defense, they understand the offensive playbook. They understand those tendencies. So they're going to look really good. And then at times you're going to see the offense, they're just going to click on some days. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like spring. You kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt. We're not really going to know what this team is like until the first 3 games of the season, when you start to see them kind of test some things and see guys actually in game and have to go through. I mean, shoot, I get it. Temple's not very good, but listen, they're going to apply some pressure to some of these guys, and you're going to get to see, these guys actually in an in-game scenario have to adjust to certain things. And I feel like we're going to know more about the team then. So I try not to get too excited about fall camp, because I feel like sometimes we can get lost in fall camp and get really excited.
I think that's a very wise take, right? And I think that, excuse Bama fans' excitement, I think a lot of it stems from new staff, right? And I think that's a big distance into why Bama fans are like, oh, the ship is still floating. Still got a lot of talent. They're still very excited. We're here, right?
I
like
will
we're
say
not
this,
dead.
though. I do think Oklahoma can have a top 3 offensive line this year in the SEC. So I went through.
Interesting, because there's some great offensive. LSU will be up for the Joe Moore. Texas will be up for the Joe Moore. I certainly pray.
So I
Bama.
broke it down this way. Last year, Oklahoma had only given up a total of 20 sacks on that offensive line to Dylan Gabriel. And I do think Jackson Arnold is going to be able to make a little bit better decisions and get the ball out a little bit quicker than Gabriel did. And a lot of that, I think, is just going to become height-wise. Dylan Gabriel, I think, had at times a hard time seeing over his offensive line. Jackson Arnold is going to be able to see almost every single one of those offensive linemen. So I think he's going to be able to see those receivers downfield and get the ball out a little bit quicker than Gabriel did. But I went through and I ran the numbers in the SEC. I pulled the top 5 teams in the SEC and their offensive line totals. You need to be anywhere between 25 to 30, but the average came out to be 27. Well, Oklahoma only gave up 20 last year. And I said, if you look at, let's just say straight transfers, you just put straight transfers on that offensive line outside of Sexton, you're only giving up, I think it was like 12 sacks last year. So I said, if you double that, that's 24. And at worst case scenario, you go 36. Alabama had 49 last year and made the freaking playoffs. So, I mean, I think Oklahoma.
I think that was a testament to how good Alabama was outside of keeping Milroe upright.
So I think if Oklahoma's offensive line ends up anywhere between 25 to 30, they're competing in the SEC at a really high level.
Fair. I want to answer this, and then Jason, quickly pass it to you, and we'll get into some ACC AP poll talk. Like I said earlier, we're gonna try and keep this to an hour, just because we got some stuff on the outside to do this evening. Alan Berry with the $5. Thank you so much, Alan. I want to say this to Alan and everybody in here. I cannot express my appreciation for all of you being in here this evening, for all of our live streams, for the support. The 2 most valuable things you have in life are time and health, and you are spending your time with us on this stream, and that's not lost on me. So it truly does mean a lot. Alan Berry, thank you for the $5 once again, and asks a great question. Can someone explain to me why so many people have Ole Miss above Alabama and Texas, and I'm not even high on the Longhorns? So I'll play devil's advocate first. It's because they got a lot, and I mean a lot of talent in the transfer portal. You're talking about Walter Nolan, who, let's be honest, I think everybody in college football wanted whenever he was coming out of high school. Amos on the defensive side also for Alabama, a guy that Alabama fans to this day, if you say, hey, you get to keep two guys, I think a lot of Alabama fans would say Downs and Amos, right? Like, I think that would probably be your two answers if you get to keep two guys, those two. The flip side of that, they invested heavy in the portal. And I'm not saying you can't win doing that. But I have always viewed the transfer portal as a Band-Aid as opposed to a foundation to which you build. Now, if you are doing a complete overhaul of a roster, by all means, go crazy in the transfer portal, right? Generate hype, give yourself a brand to then recruit off of. They're not overhauling at Ole Miss. So I'm not saying it's not going to work. But conventional wisdom tells me that it's going to be tougher than anticipated. You got guys that, why did Michigan just win it all, gentlemen? One, they had a phenomenal defense, a really great rushing attack that allowed them to control the ball. It allowed their defense to constrict. They were like an anaconda this past season. They just constrict you. But they had been together forever. I mean, they knew everywhere. McCarthy knew everywhere everybody was going to be. The linebackers, the cornerbacks, they could take chances because they knew if my guy behind me sees me doing this, he's got me. He knows what's happening. We've built up that rapport. You don't have that at Ole Miss. Personally speaking, I would have Bama and Texas above Ole Miss, and I know that I'm biased there.
I would have Bama there.
I listen. I think that Texas, Makuba is a huge.
They're doing the same thing though that you just said.
No, but they didn't overhaul everything, right? Like when you look, they got Makuba and Javion Cole. That's going to be your two big ones. Offensively, yes, like wide receivers. You're correct there, Jason. But wide receivers are a little bit different because that I think that's a bit easier of a plug and play than say offensive linemen.
Lost CJ Baxter, so
that hurt. But they still have Jaden Blue. They still have Gibson. But no. Listen, Baxter. That's a tough one.
But I mean, I think it's fair to say though, Texas has a lot of. They have one really big concern and a lot of questions.
They do.
I'm not saying
they
Texas.
Got Makuba, their secondary is a real big concern.
Yeah, no, listen, 100%. Truth was telling me this the other day that there was only like 3 or 4 points difference in terms of rankings between Oklahoma's secondary and Texas's secondary last year. And well, by the numbers, like when you look it up, that
But they have 9 transfers in the 2 deep on their defense though as well.
Fair. Yeah. But I also think that their offensive line is built by Texas, right? Quinn Ewers is still there. Ole Miss has a lot of transfer offensive linemen. That worries me. They took 2 guys from Washington that are now starting, and I believe a third that's now starting. 3 transfer offensive linemen. That's rough.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's Dart stay healthy.
Yeah.
That's a big one too.
And I also think Sark is a more buttoned up play caller than Lane Kiffin. I think that's ultimately what would give Texas the lane to me is Lane, because you're right, Jason, and I did not take that into account. So I completely concede that point. Texas did, now that we're going through this, Texas did take a lot more transfers than I think even I had remembered. So fair play. I totally concede that point.
But Ole Miss probably had more impactful.
I wasn't saying
especially on that defensive line, which is what I think a lot of people look at and say, Ole Miss is going to be really good on the defensive side of the ball.
But they still have Pete Golding.
No. We don't.
I knew that was coming.
Now that Pete Golding ain't there, he's
third and Goldie.
Man.
And I do give the edge to PK over Golding, right? Golding's theory is like different. Can it work? We'll see. But he relies so much on linebackers. Are the defensive linemen going to be able to flourish in the manner that you would hope? But Jason, no, and I'm not saying
one thing about it though. I think that the biggest loss that they had 11 guys go to the draft. Number one, first and foremost, they had 11 guys go to the draft. You had Michigan have 13, and nobody thinks Michigan's going to do anything this year. I would tell you that they're closer to what they were a year ago at Michigan than they are at Texas. Because the biggest loss, even with all those 11 guys, is Bo Davis to LSU.
Yeah.
He turned 2 3-star defensive interior linemen into first and second round draft picks, and they're not there anymore, and neither is he. They talk about his lack of recruiting or whatever you call it. Chicken's on all of our shows. I think one of the smartest things I've seen in the comments, period, this offseason was him saying Bo Davis was what was the culture of that Texas locker room. He's the one that had the shit fit on the bus after the Iowa State game. He was the one that was holding those guys accountable in a way that Sark has never done. And not for nothing, but they're not even getting the guys in the state, really. I know the Sharma thing has kind of turned back around. I don't know that anybody really believes that's going to stick either. I think that a lot of these guys are going to wait and see on the defensive side. And if you're not building in the trenches, right now it looks to me like, yeah, they're doing great with receivers. They're going to do good they're going to do really good with offensive linemen. I think they've done a fabulous job there. And Kyle Flood's a hell of a coach, right? But to me, the trenches on the defensive side of the ball that everybody talks about is where I don't know how you allow Bo Davis to get out of Austin. I don't know how you allow it.
That's my biggest question with Austin or with Texas is interior defensive line. What I would differentiate between Michigan and fair play on Bo Davis. I do agree with you. I think that is a massive loss. Sark is still there. The quarterback is still there. They still have an offensive line that is going to be up for a Joe Moore. Michigan doesn't have those.
I'm not worried about their offense, though, Ty. I'm worried about what are they going to do on defense if they're not getting pressure on the quarterback.
Hold on. You're not worried about their offense?
I'm not.
I'm not that
because I really have a question.
As worried as I would be about their defense if I'm Texas.
Well, I mean, their defense is a huge question, but I have a question about their wide receiver room because although they got Isaiah Bond in the portal,
Isaiah Bond,
what you got a bunch of wide receivers around you that have really not played a snap of football.
Isaiah Bond's not the best wide receiver they got. Silas Bolden's a freaking monster, guys. That guy is a freaking monster. As my camera even agrees with me.
Where's their AD Mitchell, though?
But I don't know. I mean, AD Mitchell didn't he get banged up a lot of last year? Right? So even he wasn't like Sark finds a way. Right? Like that's one thing offensively. Sark finds a way. I'm not worried about their offense. It's the defense.
And I find it interesting that you guys have are you guys seeing concerns on their interior defensive line? Because they have Bill Norton, which I think was the transfer from Arizona. He's going to be pretty freaking good. And then they got that one kid from, I'm trying to think of his last name. Is it like Salvusala or something like that?
You're better than I because I didn't even attempt.
I think he came from like Arizona State or something like that. I mean, they've got some guys on the interior that are going to be able to play. I mean, there's questions about like, okay, is Jermaine Lole going to be healthy enough? I think the biggest question on this Texas team is their secondary. That's got to be the biggest question.
I think it's their defensive line. Because Andrew Makuba is a massive win. Javion Cole is one of the highest graded cornerbacks in the transfer portal. Malik Muhammad's a monster. Right? Malik Muhammad's someone Bama wanted when they wanted real bad. So Kalen, what did I saw Pete G wants to play man more. He got Amos to help pressure to allow more man coverage, improve defense and lane on offense. That's probably why I don't disagree with that at all. Fanatic. I think that's all 100% accurate. To me, Lane Kiffin, for all of his brilliance, he calls with so much ego, right? And like, I think that's what got him in the trouble with Alabama last year is like, there's what you should be doing. And then there's, I want to prove a point and I'm going to do it my way. And a lot of the times it works for Lane. But whenever you get into that, upper echelon, it gets a little bit harder. I think South Texas saying, where was Bo Davis culture in the 2011, 2013 teams?
What does that mean?
I'm not sure, but thank you for the $2, South. Kalen DeBoss says, this guy loves Texas. I'm a Bama fan, Kalen. I'm just giving my honest opinion on the Longhorns. I think that they're going to be a good team. Listen, I don't agree with the takes that say Texas is going to win the SEC. I'll let it be known right now. But I do think that they're a darn good team, right? I think that they have some pieces that I like. But, guys, we've ranted, we've raved there. Let's talk the ACC, right? And as you can see, I have put in the title, will Miami finally break through? Coach Shawn, we're talking ACC, and I know how much it just warms your heart to talk about Miami. Floor is yours.
I mean, listen, man. I you know me, bro. I keep it real.
That's why I threw it to you like this, because I can't wait for what's about to happen.
I'm not here to be politically correct and all that. You know, I'm not here to break stats down and tell you Miami has a problem and it's not going to leave them this year, right? If Miami fans and administration would just leave the coach alone, whomever the coach is, it's going to take a while in Miami, man, because while you have all the resources and all the money in the world at a private institution, you want everything now. You have a microwave institution at your school that want to put all the eggs in the basket and don't understand that football, it's not just about recruiting. It's not just about getting players at the university, man. It's about chemistry. It's about assistant coaches. It's about compliance. It's about the whole shebang. That's what made Nick Saban so great. It's not just about bringing players in here, bro. There's development that has to go on. There's a practice culture that your players have to run, right? And Mario Cristobal, yeah, exactly, Jason. I mean, Mario's an awesome coach, and I honestly believe if they would just give him time, stop expecting to win a national championship every year, and be honest with yourself, they could actually find their way back into a 10, 11 win season. They really could, but they won't. Their culture is broken at Miami. Is broken from the ground up. There's no way you can tell me a school like Louisville can build a 30,000 seat stadium back in 94 or whatever it was. And now that stadium holds 60,000 people and you've got bigger and better and better every season. But you can't find the money in Coral Gables to tear down some of them raggedy ass buildings right downtown and make you a stadium called the Eye of the Storm or something. You got to travel 45 minutes all the way to the Dolphin Stadium, Hard Rock Stadium, right? And you call that a home game. I got a homeboy who coached football in high school football in Florida that tells me the players love the nightlife in Miami. Like it's Miami, right? When I was young, I would love to be in Miami too, right? But they make jokes about Miami football. The stadium's empty. The fans are at home watching. The ticket prices are stupid high. You closed off A-Day. Like, I don't understand what they're doing in Miami. So Miami's going to bring in all these great players. You got Cam Ward, right? You got no excuses from the quarterback situation. Miami's going to beat some people. But I predict Miami will win 8 games. They'll go 8-4. They'll, 9-3 at best. And it'll just be another season where they'll lose to somebody they're not supposed to lose to. I think they'll win 8 games, maybe, right?
Will he take a knee?
Facts. I mean, it's just always something that's going to overshadow
stuff, man.
It's just going to mark my words on this. Miami will find something will happen to overshadow the successes of whatever they're trying to do at Miami. I don't have no faith in I have all the faith in if they just leave the coaching staff alone. I don't have any faith in the administration. I don't have any faith in their fans. Their fans to me are about as clueless as Tennessee fans. Not all of them. Not all of them. Shout out to Coach Hayes, my brother. But most of their fans expect way too damn much. That's just not how it works, man. You got to bring these kids in. You can't have kids cursing each other out on the sideline. You got to set a culture. If you don't have a culture, brother, you're going to get beat by somebody that you're not supposed to get beat by. You're going to look up in the fourth quarter at one of these little schools and your ass going to be in a fight. Those kids went to Texas A&M 2 years ago, and they were in awe. I saw the interviews post game. They was like, we couldn't believe it was that many people in the stands. It was awesome. Like, that's a problem, man. That's a problem. At some point during the season, they'll find a way to fail, and it'll be the same old thing. You know what I mean? Mark my words. Play this back at the end of the season. Period.
Now, before I pass this on, Coach, Truth asks a damn good question, quite frankly. Is Cristobal's move from Oregon to Miami the worst coaching decision of the past few years?
I don't think so. I don't think so. He's from Miami. It made sense at the time. I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so. Mario's from Miami, right?
Miami
He
alum.
understands he understands the pipelines. He understands the high school coaches. When you coach college football at Division I university, man, you got to have relationships with the high school coaches, or you got to have somebody on staff that has relationship with the high school coaches. I've told everybody about the story I was involved with Matt Luke and another coach that was at Nebraska. If you don't have relationships, brother, it doesn't matter. I don't care about your scheme. I don't care about if you can't get the kids in a 4-hour radius in every direction, unless your brand is huge enough to go outside of that radius and get top kids. So it made sense at the time. No, I don't think so. I mean, what is Oregon doing so well outside of recruiting that I should say he made a mistake? I mean, I understand the failures at Miami, the same failures that's been there since Ray Lewis left, right? But I can't really call it a mistake. I mean, what the hell is Oregon doing? Yeah, you got money.
They probably would have been in a national championship if Mario would have stayed
there.
there.
They have support at Oregon on a different level than what he'll ever get at Miami. Even being from there.
At Miami, you have 1,000 hands in the pot, man. Everybody, when you contribute at Miami, this is what I know personally. They feel like you owe me something now. I mean, I guess I would too, but it's a bigger problem at Miami than what's going on in Oregon. But I really can't call it a mistake at the time.
Fair. No, I love your reasoning, right? Like if you're going back to your alma mater, like you're going back to put on. Right? Like you're going back to be the guy. And listen, this is a business where all these guys have egos.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they? It's like, Jonathan, before I pass it to you, and Coach, who wins the ACC?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick with Clemson, man. I mean, until otherwise, Clemson gonna win that conference. I mean, it's not really a lot there. NC State is gonna be good. Florida State is gonna be good. Clemson's gonna win that thing, I believe. I think with Cade Klubnik coming back with some Dabo motivation, I don't know if he could be able to use the rest of y'all bus slogan again, but I do think that Clemson has enough talent to win that conference. I really do.
Hey, and don't forget, a healthier wide receiver room and second-year Garrett Riley.
It's a whole fact.
True. And I'm going to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off. I agree. I have Clemson in the ACC, but I wanted to liken this right here. Then, Jonathan, I'm going to pass it to you. All these coaches have ego. It's the same reason Coach Shawn, PG, Jason, and I even believe, Jonathan, you might remember this about me. I love fighting, right? Whether we're talking boxing or UFC. If I'm not watching football, I'm watching boxing, I'm watching UFC, or I'm at the kickboxing gym. Like that's my pastime outside of football. All of these professional fighters, you'll hear them after they lose, and you're like, "Oh, that guy's delusional. He's saying like, it just wasn't my night, but let's redo this, and I'm gonna get him." And everybody's like, "That fighter's delusional." You have to be to step in that ring. You gotta be a little bit crazy.
He's got a bigger ego than freaking college football coaches too.
My point exactly. You have to be the same way. Right, to step into this arena of college football, NFL like this, you have to have an ego. That's how they get there. That's how they get to that point, because they are just always striving. Shout out Max Holloway. Blessed Keaton says, UFC 300 was one of the greatest moments I've ever seen in my life in the last 10 seconds. Winning it the whole fight, set points to the ground against Justin Gaethje, who has one hit knockout power, and says, "No, I'm going to give you your shot in these last 10 seconds. I've won all 5 rounds." And Max puts him out cold first time he has. I mean, unbelievable. Jonathan, talk to me about the ACC.
Here's my take on Miami real quick. I'm going to break it down like I did with Jimbo Fisher. For a team to break through, all I do is ask, what has changed to make that breakthrough, right? And when I look at Miami, what have you done to prove to me you're going to win the ACC?
Not Neil.
In my opinion, nothing. So you're looking at a repeat cycle here. I think Mario Cristobal, yes, he played there. He's from there. It all sounds great. You know the school's there. So you think this is a done deal. We have to also consider the fact, how good is he at reeling in these kids to not go to, look, Tootsie's, the nightlife, everything there at Miami at the same time. And it's not just about Mario Cristobal, but the surrounding staff. You don't just have to deal with just the players. You're dealing with your staff. As Alabama fans, we know that all too well with Pete Golding. It wasn't a player getting pulled over for a DUI. It was Pete Golding getting pulled over for a DUI. Those are things you have to consider. It's the surrounding area. It's going to be just what have you done for me lately to show me that you're going to break through this. And to me, Tyler Van Dyke going, everything else is proven that everybody else is moving on except Mario Cristobal. So, and with that being said,
how
in
many
my opinion,
quarterbacks do you get to waste? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, so, I mean, I don't know what else to say other than, look, I like Mario Cristobal as a
Can
coach.
I ask you a question real fast, Jonathan? Because this
Yeah.
is something I've asked for a while, but you're fresh back. I think there's a principled argument to be made. Everybody talks about how much pressure Billy Napier is under. He has a gauntlet of a schedule.
That is brutal.
So
Brutal.
here's my
Thing.
question. Here's
Okay.
my question. Is there a principled argument that Cristobal is right on his heels in terms of pressure? Because at least if Billy
Yes.
Napier doesn't succeed at the rate some people want him to, he can just point to the schedule and be like, what do you want me to do this year with that?
And
Like,
next year.
if they make a bowl game, build the statue.
Yeah.
But if
They win 6
Miami,
games.
if Miami doesn't excel with their schedule with Cam Ward after what we just watched him do at Washington State, I think there's an argument that he's under just as much
Absolutely.
pressure.
If Billy Napier wins 9 games and if Billy Napier only wins 8 games and Mario Cristobal only wins 9, Miami should fire Mario Cristobal.
Yeah, if you look at this schedule, you're not wrong. Look, they got Rutgers, they got Florida, but then they got Florida A&M, Ball State, South Florida, Virginia Tech,
2 games.
Louisville.
Wait, USF.
Wow.
I give them that one. That is a tough one.
Okay.
No, genuinely, they're a good team. They're a good team.
Okay. And then they get Florida State at home. They get Duke at home, which I don't know what Duke is. I mean, I
No,
like
without
their quarterback.
Elko and Riley Leonard, it's not there.
Yeah, and I mean, they've got Georgia Tech on the road, but they should have beaten them last year for sure. Wake Forest at home. Wake isn't going to be anything like what it used to be. They don't have to play Clemson. They don't have to play, they're getting Syracuse. They do get Syracuse. That's a possible loss. But all these games, they should win pretty much every game except for maybe Florida State.
And
I agree.
Vodka.
Maybe Virginia Tech.
I've got them
They
losing
get
to
'em
Florida State and Vodtech. They should win every other game.
I mean, listen, Virginia Tech is a upstart possibility that you expect them to maybe be one of those teams that is a dark horse. They're not. They're not going to be a favorite in that game.
Yeah.
I mean, Florida, the Florida game, they could lose that one. They're going to probably lose that one. But I'll tell you what, I think that the seat starts boiling if they lose in the Swamp. And not that it's an easy place to win at, but when you went and got the best quarterback in the portal, according to everybody, you've had plenty. And how many quarterbacks you need to run through? I'll say the same thing about Clemson, by the way.
Fair. So,
But-
Jonathan, who wins the ACC?
Yeah, I got Clemson, to be honest with you. I think Dabo, it's time for him to make a statement. It's been too long, right? He cemented himself in Clemson. I think he's under some pressure this year to perform. So, and I believe Klubnik comes back. So, I mean, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know what to take from Florida State this year. I think they're going to be good. I don't know how good. Miami has a super easy schedule, 2 losses on the schedule, right? But once again, how much do you take that into consideration when you rank Miami? If they win 10 games, it's not like they're winning 10 games in the Big Ten or SEC or nothing, right? So, like, how much quality do you give that? So, when you look at this, I look at Clemson, and I think they're going to perform this year under the scrutiny that Dabo Swinney's been under. So, it's going to be one of those years for him, I think.
PG.
Just asking who's going to win the ACC. It's going to be Clemson. As far as when you look at Clemson's schedule, like They get to come out the gates week 1. We're going to see what they're like in Georgia. But again, it comes back to what I said. I mean, they have a healthy wide receiver room this year, and it's Garrett Riley's second year. I think Clemson probably would have won the ACC last year and been in the playoffs if they wouldn't have had as many injuries to their wide receiver room. Like, Cade Klubnik just didn't have anybody to throw to was the problem. But going back to Truth's question, though, Mario did make a mistake leaving Oregon to go to Miami. When you look at that move, it's pretty much the same move that Lincoln Riley made. Almost the exact same move. He took a program that was in a very good spot, and he went to a program that was pretty bad spot and hasn't been good for a while.
I still think Lincoln's was worse, like exponentially worse. Y'all were in the playoffs. Y'all were just a defense away from really making moves. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but Oregon's kind of been right
made
there.
that
Like
decision.
they've kind of always been on the outside looking in. And they were, I mean, especially going into the NIL era, if they would have had more continuity with Mario Cristobal, I mean, I think Oregon probably would have been in a national championship by now.
be interesting to see for sure. For sure. Jason, who wins the ACC?
It in Miami. I'm not sure that I think it's Clemson either. So I'm not sure I think it's Clemson either. I don't know, man. If you're depending on freshman wide receivers now, they didn't do anything to address their offensive line issues. They did go get Matt Luke. I'll give them that. But I think there's an issue there with who they have. It may not even be something that Matt Luke can come in and you know, wave a magic wand over them and say, hey, they're going to be better now. I struggle with that. I don't know that. And the other part of it is that Dabo is the other thing he's being so stubborn about. I mean, you're hearing him say stupid stuff like the guys in the portal aren't good enough to play at Clemson. You were 8-4, Dabo. 8-4. What are we talking about? You know? And then on top of that, you also hear him say things like, well, we're going to run the Clemson offense here. Garrett Riley's offense took TCU to the national championship game. TCU. What are we talking about here? Again, there's a lot of things that you can continue blaming this on quarterbacks at Clemson when they continue to get number 1 rated recruits out of high school, or you can call it what it is. Dabo is he is really full of himself and what he's done in his career. I'm not saying he hasn't been fantastic, but he's living off of that now. And until you're ready to evolve, the one thing about Nick Saban, he bitched and complained about it the whole time, but he would evolve.
Fair.
Yeah, he
Fair.
He did complain.
But he would evolve, though.
Yeah.
He made complete. I mean, we're talking about when he did that with Lane Kiffin, that was a fundamental change for Nick Saban in what he wanted to do. He hated that shit. You know he did.
Mm-hmm.
But they win and won national championships because of it.
So who you got winning it?
I've been kind of back and forth, but I think that it's probably going to be somebody like
Save on Tech. Save on Tech.
I think NC State or possibly Virginia Tech, but I think it's NC State or SMU. I think SMU is going to come in and they have. I love Lashley. I like their quarterback. I think depth that may hurt them a bit, but I like SMU.
That's a dark horse. That's a
While
dark
I
horse.
don't agree, I think Clemson has it. I love the pick, right? Because I do agree that SMU is a team that people should not sleep on. They're a good team. They're a good team, right? I think Clemson will win it, but I love going out on the limb for the
So
pick.
hold on. If he's got SMU winning the ACC, does that mean
I
we
said
could
somebody like NC State or SMU? I also said NC State. Don't forget I said NC State.
Yeah. No, we're throwing the NC State pick out. The SMU
No, we're
pick
not.
is way sexier. It's way
I'm just
sexier.
saying.
Does that mean we could see all 4 Power 4 conferences see new members win their conference this year?
That is a possibility.
Could.
I think the SEC is probably the least likely to see a new member win the conference this year.
I agree.
But I mean,
Well, I also think Big Ten, right? Like I like what Oregon's bringing, but if Ohio State gets that quarterback situation figured out, they are so damn talented. They have got so much depth.
Hey, they got to beat Michigan first to get to that championship game.
You are
They got
you're 100% right. I have nothing for you. I'll tell you who does have something for you. Lisa with the $10 saying you all deserve more tuition and fees, but here's a payment plan installment. Roll Tide. Roll Tide, Lisa.
Roll Tide.
Nice. Roll
Ladies and
Tide,
gentlemen,
Lisa.
it is about that time. All right. We're going to get out of here. And I do agree with the Pitt fan in here. Talk is Pitt. I think Pittsburgh is going to be good. I think that they're going to be better than people expect. I just have Clemson winning it just because I think Garrett Riley, year 2, quarterback continuity, and they have a lot of talent on that Clemson team as well. But we're going to go around the table. We're going to reverse the order this time. We'll start with Jason, then PG, then Jonathan, and Coach Shawn. Where can the people find all your great content?
Hall of Fame College Football with Jason and the coach. It's at CFB-pod right here on YouTube. You can also find me on Twitter at JW_HOF. Thanks, everybody, for coming in. Appreciate you having me, Ty.
Always, my man, always. PG.
Yeah, y'all know where you can find me over here on YouTube, The PG Show. Cover all things OU athletics. So it's about to get into the thick of it. Fall game's about to be over. Football season's right around the corner.
Love it. Jonathan.
At College FB Lewis on X, and then Bama Talk with John on YouTube.
Beautiful. Glad you're back, man. Glad you're back.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, guys. It was a rough year and a half. Yeah.
Well, you're back now, and that's all that matters. Be sure to go check out all of his content. Follow him on Twitter. One more time on that YouTube channel.
Bama Talk with John. So I've narrowed my focus. I'm only going to be talking about Alabama. I'll get on here and do stuff like this, but mainly it's going to be Alabama content.
Hey, it's a lot easier that way. Make no mistake
so
about
much
it.
time in a day.
Coach Shawn.
JMHO Sports Talk on Twitter and YouTube. Shout out to all my former players in the chat. Love y'all boys to death. JMHO Sports Talk. Just my humble opinion on YouTube and Twitter. Thank you for having all of us, Ty.
Always, man. Always, right? Always a good convo, Moon Rocka. Hey, appreciate you being here. And I'm still waiting on that message so you can school me up on what I need with the supplements and stuff I need to be taking in my newfound workout routine. Lynn, thank you for being in here. Need to get with you as well, Lynn. Thank you, everybody. Like I always say, your 2 most valuable things in life are time and health, and you're spending your time with us. But speaking of time, it's time to let the 6th member of the panel go ahead and say their final adieu. The spinning wheel of doom. And it spins.